Hi, we're after the show with Michael Angelo Batio. After his clinic tonight at Alta Loma Music with an overcrowded audience that just rocked the house down. So it's sort of a cool thing. We're going to get to chat a little bit about how Michael got going and some of the stuff that really makes him keep going and some of the stuff he really likes to do, and talk a little bit about his guitar, some of the guitars he designed.
Sure, thanks, Pete. Yeah, what started me playing was my mom played piano. So I used to watch her as a little guy. I started playing piano at 5, and then the music I liked really wasn't piano based. I heard more of these heavy sounding chords, and when I realized it was electric guitar, that's when I started playing guitar. And I started at 10, and you know, like I said in the clinic today, I just performed. I played on stage my whole life. And I found that I just loved it. You know, it was like show after show after show, and I mean, even tonight after the show, I still love it. You know, I'm looking forward to it tomorrow.
Right, right.
You know, it's a life, but it starts with performing. I mean, look at you when we were at the music show. I walk in there, you're up on stage playing. That's what I consider the game. You know, like if you're in athletics, you have to play. If you're in music, you have to perform. That's the reason for playing, and I just fell in love with it, the whole idea of it.
And of course, you grew up in the Chicago area.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Cleveland, and one of the things I think, and even today in Chicago, there's still a lot of places to play.
There is, yeah.
I mean, and both of us were lucky and growing up in communities that even if it was the pizza place or it was the tavern down the road or the Catholic church hall, there was always some place even as a teenager to play.
Right.
Today, some of the kids don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, in fact, you know, it's funny you mentioned the church because we used to play. The church around my house had teen centers.
Right.
So one of my first gigs, I was like 12 and 13 years old. They paid us $15 a piece. We had a 3-piece band, 45 hours. That was $1 million to me, but we got paid to play, and it was the church that sponsored it.
Right. I remember my first gig was playing at a junior high dance after school. I don't know if we got paid, but it didn't matter. All I knew, I was in the gymnasium, and there was a stage, and we were up there playing.
Yeah.
And another thing, I don't know if you did this, but there were a lot of battles of bands that used to go on, and I used to go there. And I remember something you talked about tonight was stealing ideas, and I remember there'd be like a whole day, it was a car show or some kind of teen fair, and you'd sit there and watch band after band play, and you'd come away with so many ideas.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, I said at the workshop tonight, especially with the internet and people, you know, venting. You know, you can see a YouTube video that has 10 million views, and I mean, some of mine are like millions and millions, and I would watch other people's and say, what can I learn from that, rather than saying what I don't like. You know, nobody likes everything, but you can learn from other people rather than being negative about it.
Right.
And that's my philosophy.
And that goes back, that sort of goes hand in hand with the live play.
I think so.
You know what I mean? Like you're saying, the NAMM show, there's so many people playing. A number of years back, Randy Bachman from
BTO, yeah.
BTO, and from what was the other band? The Guess Who.
That's right.
He'd come out with a pedal, and I was at the booth talking to him, and we got talking about. He started on the violin, and he said, if you listen to all my solos years later, I could play those on the violin. So, and it was like he said he didn't realize how much things influenced from him being in the band as a kid and all that. It's just amazing stuff. Now, you've been with. First time you came out to Alta Loma Music, we've sort of carbon dated it back to 1987.
That's right. Yeah.
And I've got to say that every time Michael comes out, it's a whole new show. It's a whole new energy. It's just rocking. It's cranking. There were kids tonight that were kindergarten age that aren't going to sleep tonight, and there's adults that left tonight that are going to. One kid said to me, who's like in high school, he goes, I don't know if I'm going to go to school tomorrow. I think I'm just going to stay home and practice. He was so motivated.
That's great.
And when I hear that, and I know when you hear that, it really excites you. Because the other quote that you said is that what you like to really try to do is to help other guitarists become better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always loved performing and you know, the goals of being signed to the major label and all that, but I also like to teach, and once I got to the point where I couldn't teach, like even when we did the very first clinic, at that time I wasn't teaching privately, because you know, I'm on the road, I'm performing, and so I think when you teach other people, it is self-serving in one way. I learned a lot about the way I play by teaching someone else, because they might ask a question that actually I had that same question, and then if I can answer it and help them, it helps me too. So it's a win-win, you know. And I enjoy it. You know, I like to. I kind of feel that, you know, I have a successful career. It's time for me to pass the gauntlet to the youngest kids. You know, let them do it. You know?
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I agree with the teaching part. Is sometimes the way I think about doing it doesn't get through to the student. And then you got to think, well, how else could you do it? And you have to explain it 2 or 3 ways. And all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, that's a way better way. It gives you another idea on something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've been affiliated with Dean, and your talk about Elliot is really true, because he's just not some dweeby guy in a suit sitting behind a desk smoking a cigar.
He's a real player.
Real player.
Yeah. I mean, and in fact, we were talking tonight, and he's got an offer to perform in May with Michael Schenker,
Wow.
and then I have I'm working on a tour of Asia that he can go on. So he's
Wow.
like, I mean, I think it's cool, and but he's a really nice guy, and he's a really good player, and he's, in fact, the new Dean line. He's got a lot of new Dean basses. He really wanted to work on it too. But yeah, that's why I like Dean guitars so much. You know, plus I really used them when I was growing up.
Right.
And you know, I love all kinds of guitars, but he's a great owner and a cool guy.
Right, and that makes the difference really with product, right? And I think right today, because there's so many companies that they've been bought out and bought out and bought out, and then there's a big company that I won't mention their name, but you know, starts with an F, you know, and they own 20 guitar lines, and they shut down the factory, and a company that was making great acoustic guitars for generations is now being made in Korea, and they start putting labels all over. Where Elliot with the Dean guitars, really, that's why guys like you and you know, Leslie West, well, the kids now that know Mountain because of Mississippi Queen.
That's right. Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Guitar Hero.
Guitar
He's
Hero.
on Guitar Hero.
You know, Leslie West could play with any guitar brand he wanted.
And he hit it off good with Elliot. Same with Dave Mustaine from Megadeth. I mean, they've got a great
And
artist.
some of the newer kids, I mean, I'm having to keep up with some of these new kids, like from Saliva and Trivium.
Right.
And
Oh,
all
it's
that.
it's crazy. I know. There's so many good bands, but you know, the thing that I like too about this generation of younger players, they seem to pay homage to the people
Yes.
that came before them. Because that's what I did growing up. You know, my dad used to say, listening to Django Reinhardt or listening to music before, you know, not just what's on the radio that particular day. And I think it really paid off.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was watching on the DVD, you doing Burn, and when you go in that one part, that one melodic thing, and I'm saying, he's doing Wes Montgomery with distortion when you're playing that
Oh, yeah,
chord
the
line.
octaves.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
going, it's Wes Montgomery, you know?
I studied Wes Montgomery.
See?
Yeah, the octaves played
Yes,
like that.
yes.
And then the George Benson way too. I know the other
and
ones.
it was, and I mean, because I'm, you know, being a horn player and a jazz guy, I went, he stole that from Wes Montgomery.
I
He
did.
just put it, and it was so cool to put a jazz guitar, famous jazz guy,
Mhm.
on a Deep Purple tune. You
Right.
know, Richie Blackmore, if he watches that, he probably went, damn, you know, why didn't I think of that?
Well, on my tribute to Randy on the DVD, I add a Django Reinhardt riff. It's doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle, and I always use it. I put it on. I find somewhere on every CD to put this one riff. It's like it's one of Django's signature riffs.
One of the funniest quotes, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but being of the generation when there was him, you talk about Jimi Hendrix, and you know, the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix, and everybody seems to know about Woodstock, but there was a huge festival when you're talking about Jimi Hendrix, you know, and Pete Townsend, you know, breaking their guitars, blowing their amps up with the Who and all that. That was at the Monterey Pop Festival.
That's right. That's
That was actually the year before Woodstock. It was in 1968. And the funny thing about it was, Paul McCartney was in the audience, and Sgt. Pepper's had just been released, and Jimi Hendrix just literally released like the weekend before, and Jimmy goes on stage and plays Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And Paul McCartney, I think George Harrison was in the audience, and Paul turned to George and said, that's the way we should have recorded the tune.
Wow.
So even when you talk about copying other people's ideas, some of the people we consider the greats are watching the greats.
That's right.
And learning from them.
Yeah.
You know, just always great having you out,
Oh,
because
thanks.
I always tell everybody it's beyond just your awesome playing, it's also what you bring to encourage people to play the guitar, and that's what we need. If we don't encourage people, you know, we're probably in the wrong business.
That's right. No, I mean, I think that, you know, you know, when I went back there, all these people taking lessons. I mean, it's a huge program. I mean, that's giving something back. You know, know, and why not? And I think it comes back to you 10 times.
It
you
does,
know?
absolutely.
You know, because we're still out jamming and performing
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and making a difference.
It is. Well,
Yeah.
thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks always for being here.
Yeah, it's great. This has been a lot of times already.